to be partnering with Latino Action Network on a host of issues. We're so grateful for their leadership and to learn from them. And we're really excited to continue our collaboration on a host of issues. I first learned about Land's lawsuit actually from one of our members who's, I believe, on the call, Jasmine, who is, as she just put in the chat, is working on a documentary. And we wanted to do this, getting ready for back to school season, and really just emphasize how pervasive school segregation is in New Jersey. This is this year is the 70th anniversary of the Brown v. Board Supreme Court decision, and yet we know how much still needs to be done just locally here in New Jersey. I also, before we kind of jump in, and I turn it over to Lan, I just want to say a couple of words about the really horrific incident, the police killing involving Victoria Lee and Fort Lee. We want to thank everyone for their support and the partnership of groups like Lan, who were really eager to join the fight to stop these incidents from happening. We are working really closely with the groups in the Fort Lee and Bergen County area, including we're going to be hosting a listening session, I believe on Thursday in Bergen County for the Asian American community. And right now we really want to invite everyone to take action by joining us and our national partner, Stop AAPI Hate, to sign a petition to various stakeholders. So we will put that in our chat, and I really encourage everyone to visit our website and check us out on social media to follow the latest updates and actions. But we are really here for our community right now, and grateful that so many groups, including Lan, have really been there supporting us. So thank you so much. And back to the lunch and learn topic today. New Jersey has one of the most segregated schools in the country. The statistics are really shocking, and there hasn't been a lot of movement on this. I mean, as someone that attended New Jersey public schools my whole life, the segregation is so clear, has been so clear, and continues to be so clear. So we've just been so amazed by the actions that the Latino Action Network is working on with other groups, including the Education Law Center. And I'd love to turn it over to Jessie and the team at Lan to talk more.
I Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. You know, yeah, so this is really hard work that we all do. We engage in the harms of really what I consider to be structural racism. And I really want to thank AAPI for inviting me to your Lunch and Learn to share about the Latino Action Network, NAACP, Urban League, United Methodist Church versus, and then several individual plaintiffs versus the state of New Jersey, citing de facto segregation in New Jersey at the intersections of race and poverty. We do have a whole case page, so hopefully, Sadai, you could throw that in the chat so we could start to share that information. I know people might be at different levels of learning about the case. So, so really, let me get my slides up. second. So for those of us who might be not so super familiar with us, we're the Latino Action Network Foundation. So we're a 501(c)(3) that was established as a charitable organization, and we work very much in tandem with the Latino Action Network, which is the primary plaintiff on the lawsuit. They're 501(c)(4). And really our mission and vision is to pursue outreach programming and advocacy work that supports the agenda of the Latino Action Network. So we have several campaigns very similar to AAPI, which is why we're always in so many of the same meetings and so many of the same meeting spaces. In addition to our educational equity campaign, we have a large contract with the Department of Children and Families, where we engage thousands of Latina immigrant women, Latina immigrants in employment and training services from as far north as Morris County all the way down to Vineland. And we do that through partnerships with 6 Latino community-based organizations. And that's a really large part of our advocacy work. It's something that we have to work for every year to make sure that it's included in the budget and is a large part of our outreach in New Jersey. We have an entire health justice campaign. We are a grantee with the Cover All Kids. So we are also working in collaboration community partners to enroll immigrant children in New Jersey family care who are income eligible, in addition to a whole other array of like health justice campaigns that we work on. And we're also really closely tied to fair share housing in terms of increasing housing access. We were part of the passing of the legislation A4 to codify the Mount Laurel Doctrine in New Jersey, pretty much citing that all municipalities have a responsibility to provide affordable housing in their town. So actually, this is a really big piece of the work because this piece probably came first before the lawsuit. So just a little bit of history on the work that we've been doing, our partners here at LAN have been doing. Housing and education, as we know, are really closely tied. And in New Jersey, we have this kind of idea of like home rule, right? Everybody talks about this home rule and stuff with the ballot, and there's very like entrenched ways of building systems that work for those in power, right? And typically when you have immigrant communities like ours, like those of AAPI, typically left out of these systems, either because of lack of language access or structural just racism and discrimination, or because, you know, of their immigration status. And we find that our community is really impacted by a combination of all 3 of those. Particularly around housing, and as a result of that, in education, right? That students in New Jersey currently can only attend schools in the communities that they can afford to live, right? So based off how that works, your income pretty much not only really determines your health, but really determines your educational outcome. So these are a list of some of our other campaigns. Just kind of get into it. So let me get into the meat and potatoes, because I really see this as this is definitely one of our favorite kind of community meetings, because we're in community that we both work really collaboratively around structural racism. But this is a situation where we're almost also needing to have dialogue that can be restorative. Right? Because the same systems that are set up to oppress Latino students are set up to oppress AAPI communities, right? But in the case of the Latino Action Network versus the state of New Jersey, we're specifically looking at the impact of Black and Latino students and how segregation has impeded their constitutional right to a fair and thorough education. That's really at the bulk of what we're looking at. And I'm going to get into the whole complaint and everything, but when you really look at the whole complaint, it's pretty much not looking at white and Asian segregation, right, as problematic. The decision has pretty much determined that the harm is in these 23 Black and Latino districts, and that remedies have to follow to improve the segregation in those 23 districts, which is a little confusing. It's like saying, yeah, there's de facto segregation, but like kind of not really. So it is a little confusing. So what I really want to share with you is like really our broad agenda and what we look at when we're talking about Latinx students. We have some statistics. You know, we were part of the census outreach. So This data is actually old. This 21.6. We actually released data in May that shows that Latino students are 30% of all students in New Jersey K through 12. So of that, we're 130, which again, this number is probably old at this point because our numbers showed that we had an 8% increase in the student population in New Jersey. But when I think I have this slide from a presentation I did again 4 years ago, and based off our report in May, surprise, surprise, the lower rates are lower. They're even lower than they were 4 years ago. So based off our report, and I'll share the information about that report, it says the rates of high school completion, enrollment in higher education in either an associate's or bachelor's degree program is the lowest among Latinx students. And I'll share some of that data. So we always ask why, like what is it when we're talking about segregation and Latinos, and it's a little confusing, right? Because there's a lot of history around race in the Latino community, kind of they call it invisible segregation, right? Kind of being labeled as white without necessarily having the white privilege. So the role, the impact of Latinos in shaping, Brown versus Board goes way back from the Mendez family. And there's a long history of anti-Latino discrimination in America and in systems, kind of like this invisible segregation of like we see it mostly now today in immigration laws, right? How we tell the story about immigrants from a really like anti-Latino criminal, imposing on society, harming society. So we have a long history of that in New Jersey. I mean, in the country. So when we get into the actual meat and potatoes of the lawsuit, it's very important that we talk about the intersections of race and poverty, because that is specifically what is this lawsuit is targeting, especially after the affirmative action decision that came out. In terms of this case, we're not just looking at race, right? We're also looking at the impact of poverty and also disability. If you really look and read through, if you have time to read through 90 something pages, I don't know if there's any lawyers in the room who like to do that. You could also see that a lot of the buildup for this case and a lot of the research for this case is not just around race and poverty, but also the needs of disabled children and special needs children, and how they are just their educational rights are not met, not just in public schools, but also in the charter school system. And in 2003, so this was filed in 2018. We waited for 2 years. We've trained a lot of youth. We've trained a lot of parents. We've talked to a lot of people over the last 6 years. And as we've been waiting, judges have come and gone. And finally, in October 6, 2023, we got a decision pretty much kind of recommending, it's noting, right? So this is very important when we talk about this, right? This is something that's very historic in the sense that really no state has ever really challenged de facto segregation, right? Segregation, most states have integrated as a result of a court order that was put upon them by force. So we really have this unique moment in time where we're challenging like segregation that was unintentional, right? Because of another policy, because of this residential. We'll talk about what some of the barriers are, because there's actual several reasons that the segregation exists and the impact of it, the implications of it. But that this is the first time that New Jersey could actually voluntarily, right, enter mediation to try and integrate New Jersey schools, which is where we're currently at in the case. Currently, the plaintiffs and the state and the lawyers are participating in mediation to discuss what possible remedies could alleviate the impact that was found in the decision of October 2023. I want to stop there for a minute because that's a lot of legal jargon. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, let me escape this. Does anybody have any questions? Thoughts? Impact? No? All right, so let's keep going. Okay, so what is it? What are the issues that really kind of impact when we're talking about Latino students in regards to them having educational equity? These are really like the 7 things that we see that we've gathered based off our community outreach, our think tanks, our youth leadership programs, all the work that we've done over really it's been decades, right? I mean, Cookie's been here a long time. We've been doing this a while. But even in the last 6 years, this is really what comes up time and again. Number one is residential segregation, right? The policing of attendance based off where you live, and that determines where you can register for a public school, right? And how that is policed currently. And we invest in policing this, right? Is really one of the biggest problems, right? Because of the concentrated poverty. And our latest report showed how Latino students, as the numbers are increasing, right? We went from 23% to 30% in the last couple of years. We're increasingly attending schools that are more than 85% non-white. And when I say non-white, I also mean non-Asian, right? It's Black and Latino or all Latino, right? In the lawsuit, it doesn't differentiate if there are districts that are Latino and Asian or Latino, Black, and Asian or a mix of that. The numbers have primarily been like, and it's really, when we talk about it, and we're in community here, knowing all how we are so all equally like impacted by structural racism, it's really like starting when you see how many districts there are with like almost 85% Latino students. And these are also not Abbott districts. So what we're also seeing is that the solutions that exist to try and create some parity among school districts is also no longer reaching where our students are living, right? So there are these school districts that have just exploded in terms of having Latino students, and they have no resources, they have no real way to address the needs of those students. The second issue that comes up time and again is language access. And in our report, you will see how this impacts at every level, from access to the type of teacher you can get, to the type of course that you can have, based off whether the system is willing to fund your educational plan, based off your bilingual status, right? The language access piece, the participation, the education, the parent piece is like completely missing. I mean, several complaints have been filed around this. Even from the parents that like are part of the plaintiffs, because I mean, federal lawsuits have been placed. The city of Newark is actually under federal oversight because of their failure to comply with bilingual education and access. The other thing that comes up time and again, especially when we do youth outreach, is mental health and special needs, right? Students just not getting, not the ratio among Latino students to mental health professionals in the schools is like, that's the biggest gap when you look at the ratio. It's like, if you pull all students, it's like 100 and something per one mental health professional. When you concentrate Latino students, it's like 300 students per one mental health professional in the school system, right? And then again, all the issues with special needs, the behavioral health, right? So it's like that you could have an IEP for a behavioral emotional condition and then need to be hospitalized for that same condition and that not be excused. So you know what I'm saying? So like we have no way of actually addressing the medical needs of students who have mental health needs. Like it's completely non-existent almost. School discipline, right? We saw Latino students have higher rates of being disciplined. Really meaning, and say like, well, what does that mean? That means that you have more time out of school as a punishment. That's what that means. When people say, "Oh, what problems with school discipline?" This is not like, "Oh, I'm just yelling at you because I don't like the way that you behave." That means that I'm actually, because I do that so often, I'm preventing you from being in school and I'm interrupting your educational time. That's what that means. right? And we noticed that really, regardless of where Black and Latino students are, whether they're in integrated school, more integrated school environments, or really segregated, and by segregated, I mean 85% Black and Latino, um, the discipline rates don't change, right? So then what is that, right? Because then that's not just integration segregation thing. That's an actual way about how do we treat Black and Latino students as opposed to other students. What are our expectations for how they behave? And I'm sure that's triggering, all those questions are triggering tons of thoughts in the AAPI community, because I know that that's a whole thing that I would love to, we should definitely have more conversations about. School environment and curriculum. I know you all fight on this very much as well as we do, but that we heard from a lot of students that they feel only visible during Hispanic Heritage Month, that they felt that their students and the fellow students didn't understand where they were really from or their culture, insensitive comments, not being seen, being taught history that was inaccurate. You know what I'm saying? Like people still teaching things like Columbus. It's like, what? You know what I mean? So kids now they know, they're like, what year is this book? And like about 15 years ago, I worked in a school that I shall not be named, with a school where the bilingual students did not have books for the first 2 weeks of school, and they sat in the lunchroom. So when people to ask me, like when people talk about, oh, segregation, how could you do that? How can you integrate? No, that's like, we want good schools. That's why I bought this house here. That's why I moved all the way over here, because I don't want to go to that school. But and they're like, well, how bad could it really be? It's bad. Okay, when it's like when they say you have a good school, it's because you don't want to know what a bad school is. A bad school is your your child may not find a safe bathroom in between classes, right? Um, their dietary needs aren't being met. They have nowhere to, you know what I mean? They haven't had a stable teacher for a core curriculum course like math or science the entire academic year. They're being taught by a substitute. So come get, like, that's when we're talking about core curriculum, school environment. That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about segregation and what segregated schools look like for Black and Brown students, Black and Latino students. And then the pathways to higher education, you know, the growing number of immigrant students in among the population of Latino students is higher and higher. And what we have found, especially in our most recent study, is that there is a large number of Latino students being fast tracked to more to career technical assistance programs versus higher ed, for financial reasons, for logistical reasons, for immigration status reasons, for whatever expectations. This is, you know what I mean? This is better for you. You know, there's lots of reasons why that might be the case. So I'm going to share some of the work that we've done. This is a policy agenda that we gathered community folks, parents, students from across New Jersey. It was a small group of us to look at the lawsuit and come up with a policy and action agenda. And this is we released this in January of 2022, I believe. The years are really kind of blending together now. And this was actually just released in May of this year. And this is available online. And what we love about this report, we're really thankful to the Rutgers Cornwall Center for doing this, because you can actually look up the data for your local district online. And again, it's using the same metrics of 85% is kind of like the marker of what's considered severely segregated. And again, some of the highlights of the findings of the report. It's basically what we show is like any gains that we had from before the pandemic in math, science, literacy have essentially been erased since the pandemic, and they're lower than what we were what we were improved from. So they're like lower than what the low was before. That's where so like in general, it shows that the average Latino student is not even prepared for high school. So forget about college. Like our fourth grade literacy and math scores are like way behind almost at every academic marker milestone that you're looking at. we're trailing behind every of the socio-demographics, trailing behind. I think the only one that we're not trailing behind the biggest gap disparity is school discipline, and it's like 3 times for Black students. And this again, just kind of showing this. This is from the report, just to pull, like, if you look at Latinx, this is enrollment, right? Just lower at every rate, every other group. The disparities in accessing coursework. Uh, Again, like I said, teacher consistency. We found that there is more success when you see Latino teachers working with Latino students. And that actually in some of the districts that we saw that were segregated, but also performing at state levels or above, was a big piece that we think is the role that Latinos play in administration and in education in the school system that works better. So their assessments, their styles of teaching, all those kinds of instruction work better with Latino students. So how do we not lose that when we start to think about solutions for integration? I mean, that's why I say, like, it's never a cookie cutter thing. Like, we all want to be like, fight the power, abolish the codes, like, let's go there. But it's like, even when they get there, how do we make sure they're safe? And that jump can't be so scary that it would make kids want to drop out, right? Because to go from, like, I know what it felt like for me growing up in a segregated school, like, and then going to college, and I was like top of my class, like, what that jump felt like, it felt like I had no idea how much other students were being prepared in addition to their education at school. SAT prep, this kind of prep, that prep, this course, that course, like, that was beyond reason for me. You know what I mean? And so many students, it's not better, it's worse today. So when we think about solutions of, like, oh, beautiful magnet schools, let's send them to, let's open the doors, let's make it countywide. Like, what does that really look like, and what does that really mean, right? When that student is in that school, right? Were we still using the same kind of racist exclusionary assessment tools and evaluations and interactions and curriculums? Like, are we still, like, so those are the kind of things I think are really important for conversation. And I just want to show, like, so when you go on that link, this is kind of what it looks like. So I know there's somebody here that's like in academia. You're going to love this. Feel free to use it and cite it and include it in any work and share with any students that might be doing work on this. So we do a lot of circles, and we actually got these facilitation rules from our friends at RAC, and it's a way for us to kind of facilitate dialogue. So you don't have to come off camera, because I know everybody feels safe when we're recording. But if you want to unmute yourself to kind of talk and ask questions, again, we're trying to be in community to have a dialogue around this, because while it's at like a court mediation level now, this is going to get real local real fast. And what we want to make sure is that we engage as many people in how to have conversations locally when these solutions start to roll out, that essentially, honestly, we'll say, right, that aren't anti-Latino and racist, right? Because there's a lot of dialogue that is just naturally embedded around educational policy. What's a good school? What's a bad school? What's a good neighborhood? What's a bad neighborhood? What's a good student? What's a bad student? What's a model student? Right? What's privileged? So when we have these conversations, I really think that these facilitation rules are really helpful. Using I statements to speak from your experience, as opposed to maybe sharing a stereotype you might have, or you know what I mean, something you might not fully understand. That when it's your turn for storytelling, so like just respecting everybody, sharing and not interrupting, and even knowing that we can't shape, like, it is really at the hands of the judge and the mediation and all those things that are happening in that room right now, like, but how can we all participate in dialogue with, like, our neighbors? I don't know if you're like on soccer teams or you have kids and people are like, did you hear that they're gonna try and build a beautiful magnet school with 100 AP teachers and, the rainbow comes from the sky onto it in Newark, you're gonna be like, yeah, that's great. I might send my kid there because I think that would be a great opportunity for them to see other kids from, you know what I mean? Like poor doesn't mean bad. Doesn't mean uneducated. I mean, like this is literally how we shape stereotypes. What we heard from our students that we worked with is that the kids that were in integrated schools that did have opportunities to attend regional schools, that they wish it had happened earlier. That had they been exposed to students and other students been exposed to them sooner, that some of the things that they experienced may not have happened. It would have been shaped differently. So, when you're doing it with peers that are parents already, honestly, I feel like it's too late. But let me not be negative and let's try to have the dialogue because I think there's gonna be a lot of resistance naturally towards this because it kind of upsets the order of things, the gatekeeping of things. Also listening closely, assuming good intentions, that it's just that we don't know what we don't know. Like I'll be honest, when I started this campaign, they had to tell me I was segregated. I was like, wait, what? That's wrong. I'm Latino and I live from Latino Burger Line and this is South America and I like it like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, you over there, keep my barrio here. I'm into it. But that's segregation. Like when I think back, it's like, oh no, yeah, it was actually hard for my parents to rent outside of this community. We were policed the minute we entered for Fort Lee. We were stopped the minute you start road too far out of Hudson County. You know what I mean? So maybe to me, it's like, oh no, I like to live here. But for a lot of parents and students that we talk to, they see how it's actually designed for them to live there. Right? Also, that when you have circles and what we talk about today stays here. I mean, but this is actually going to be recorded, so we're out here public, and they're making sure that the space is as safe as it can be. I mean, in reality, we're only as safe as we all can be at any time. All right. So I'm gonna open up the floor if anybody has questions, comments, concerns. Yes. Cookie.
I have a couple of reactions and discussion points here from the questions that I saw in the chat. The first one was about how can we get more involved? I think it came from Jeff. What I would say, like I said to us last night when we were in this other meeting, Jeff, that we haven't always been together, but I've worked in nonprofits for about over 30 years, let's say, and in Middlesex County. And the only time that we've actually had to work for and help with Asian issues was in one of the schools in Middlesex County. In fact, one of the top schools in the county as far as academics went. But there was a lot of Asian bashing over there. And there was a lot of not ignorance, what do you call that? They wouldn't look at it from the school level, and we had to fight with the school a little bit because they just let it be and it was like it was okay. And those are the kinds of things that was happening around Middlesex County, right? So we did have Asian American leadership and human relations things, and it was again connected to race and bias, right? But so this entire conversation is so significant, and our relationships to continue to build it is absolutely golden. I would like to hear from the Asian side. How do you think this relates to you, if you will, right? What part of it seems to connect with you, even though your numbers aren't there, but they really are because of the way the language is and the effort, right? Because I want to hear that. I want to hear is that important to you? Do you think it is? If there was a magnet school in the middle in the center of Newark, but you would have complete scholarly university prep and all of that stuff, because that's the thing. There's things with geography too here, right? And the second question that I saw was from a teacher, how can we help? We're in academia, this is great, and all of this. Well, let me say this to the teachers on this call, and let me say it very seriously. This is the best kept secret in New Jersey for some stinking reason, right? And I don't understand it. And when educators talk to me, and that happens a lot, and even and even more offensively in communities of color. They don't know what this is. They don't want no trouble. They just want to keep on doing what they do, not realizing how much this affects them and the students that are coming thereafter. There was a third question that I kind of did have an answer for. How can you help? I think that's what it was. How can you help is by, like I say it in rallies, I say it every night when I see new people. This is not a conversation to just say, oh, that was a nice meeting. This is one where we're advocates. So we need this message to grow. We need to educate our communities, and we need to do that collectively. This is not this is by far a teacher bashing. This is a teacher improvement bashing. This is a whole movement that will affect our grandchildren. So this is just not something to take away and forget about it. So anyone and everyone should, we have it all there. We're trying very much to educate our communities. And once we do, and once I think you do, if you actually have these kinds of conversations out in your communities, you're going to find out how people just blow up because it starts to pour out all of the things that they've experienced and all of the troubles that they are holding on to. You want to talk about behavioral challenges and you want to know why you can't concentrate in school. Here it is. It's just because we're dealing with this in a Black and brown way, because it is the most egregious. It affects us all in horrible.
Okay, I just want to step in because I want to be mindful of the time and that, and I see that Jeff has his hand raised. And again, I want to be mindful that Black and brown is different than Black and Latino. Because I know that there's tons of brown across Asia. So just to be clear. So Jeff, do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Cookie for your comments and just like for the really like in-depth, like every slide. I just felt like I definitely hope you can share your slides because it really gave me a lot of thoughts, right? And pause and wanting to learn more. I think just to respond to, Cookie and also the question about how Asian Americans can get involved, or should be looking or can be looking at this. I think from my point of view, I mean, I think it's important for Asian Americans to see the harms of segregation in our communities, right? That being denied, um, access to schools that are diverse, that represent the full spectrum of diversity of our state is harmful for all communities. Because as we've been arguing with our educational advocacy around school curriculum, is that when children learn, when students learn about other cultures, other communities, that is so enriching, right? Like that is such a valuable part of our education. So I think I would love to explore more ways of how we can make that point in the legal space, right? I don't know if there's an opportunity at some point to file an amicus brief, but I think that's something that I would look into. I also want to look up, I don't know who put this question out there about data affiliation within the API communities, but we know that there are several communities in New Jersey where there's a large concentration of both Latino and Asian communities, right, in Hudson and Bergen County in particular, and probably other parts of the state. And I think we I know that it's a public data set. We would love to look into that more because I think that there are school districts in which I think there is segregation. Latino and Asian are segregated. They're together in school and they're segregated, right? And that's definitely, something that I think has probably more of a direct nexus on this case. But, I think I love that question because we have to look at that data and how that intersects with the API community.
I agree. Like I said, it's set up by design for us to see each other as not of the same kind. And I think that being included, that fight that you have around curriculum, I agree, because it's restorative. And in the sense that please teach us more inclusive history because we have been here. Okay? Like, stop pretending we haven't been here. So please be more inclusive of how this country was actually built, right? I think that's the restorative part, and that's why you get the resistance, right? Because that's why it's racism. And I'm actually, I didn't get a chance to go through the questions before, but AAPI, how to get more engaged and like, so I would love to see some restorative circles. Like I know we talked about your different communities in Montclair. We did one in Bergen County with RAG. We've gone to a couple of community colleges. So we like to take our show on the road. So we would love to have like, small is good, a group of 5, 10 people that we can kind of pull together and have just a nice intimate discussion around what integration would look like in your communities. We'd love to give you the resources and for you all to have that same discussion, because I don't know if, I mean, and I'm sure you have all been, AAPI has been in your educational advocacy to those public hearings at DOE and know what that room looks like. It looks like 50, and they call them parent rights, right? But I'm like, which parents and whose rights are we talking about? But it looks like 50 of that agenda, right? And 5 of us. So we would not like to see that come local public hearings. We would like to see 50 of us integrated and them segregated, whatever them is. But our voices need to be louder because right now it's the other way around, right? Their voices are louder. We would like to see, let me see, going by the questions, teacher presentation so much. What can educators do to support the, that's also like a little bit outside the scope, I say, of my like academic expertise. That's why we do the work with Rutgers Cornwall Center. I was actually just in a meeting with Assemblywoman Carmen Morales, Teresa Morales, who's an educator, and she's doing all this research on like what works and what programs work and how she was, forget about going to college. If you graduate high school with your associates as well, or doing this or doing that, like she has all this practical experience of how to implement programs that work, and so many educators do. So how do we get more of that, right? Like how do we get more people to be able to be have a voice and influence on that? And I mean, to me, they need to organize as well, right? Students need to organize, teachers need to organize. How do we get, because the pathway to education, like the teacher shortage and all those things, and where people have access to teaching and all that hierarchy stuff, I think is very important as well. Kind of going. And then I see that there's a group in Trenton that partially led the effort against the predatory charter schools. Yes, so I always say that's always what's missed, is that there's also it includes charter schools, right? Because we see the rates of disabled students not being included, and then low income students, right? The lottery is not quite integrated. Because then that determines how the performance of that school. People connecting with us, and local level to push the needle. What responsibility do municipalities versus county versus state have? Yeah, these are all great questions. So this is really important because it's at the state and the local level. I think a natural outset of this campaign, there's, and we have some documents we'll share after. I'll share the slides. We're putting a document together with like all the potential remedies that are identified in the original complaint, so that people could actually have some resources to be like, okay, what if someone built this? And what if so you need more of that. You need conversations and people that to be included in that. And not just like community folks, but also like stakeholders. If you know school board members and stuff like that, to really have expertise in implementation. So having dialogues around that is really, really important. And to us, like, man, we gotta like take over these school boards. I don't know how that's gonna work, but to us, the Vote 16 effort is very, very important, because we do believe, that there is not enough representation, especially when it comes to the Latino community, and so many children having immigrant parents who are not allowed to vote in the school board. Our representation is just not there. So the more we can empower young people who can run, and eligible immigrants who can participate in local election efforts or have representation, because this is going to be a big problem, right? So you could create, let's say, in a dream world, which they're definitely going to be putting like, well, hopefully not burning stuff outside my address. in Bergen County when I say let's make Bergen County schools countywide. They would love that. Let's make it so Ridgewood and Hackensack and Teaneck and Norwood all the same regional school. Everybody be like, what? Freak out. But let's say we do that, right? It's also about like if we don't have a system structure, a school board system, like who's represented, right? How are parents and students being represented? So they live in this community, but now they're going to this community. How are they being represented on that school board? So like all these kinds of things are really important. That's going to get hyper local really fast. So I think that the more work we can do together with your local communities, in addition to all the other very important campaigns that we have against the police and for voting rights and for redistricting and for social service, this is like just equally as important. That's really what we need to do.
Just you talking about just the idea, right, of regional schools, right? I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to show of hands, people who may have grown up outside of New Jersey, but if you go to North Carolina, you go to other states, I mean, show of hands, like who is aware of these schools? It's very common outside of New Jersey, and if you have either relatives or friends or family members who go to these schools, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, obviously nothing's perfect, but I think just an idea that I have, I think we would love to solicit stories from people who students that go to schools, right, at these outside of New Jersey that are magnet schools, right? I know a couple exist in New Jersey, but some of these solutions exist, not far from where we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the segregated school is terrible. Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, I always say when we do story sharing, I always share like I didn't realize I came from a segregated school until I went to college. College was really the first time I entered an integrated environment in college. It was the first time I realized that so I was 18 already. Yeah. And same, we have a lot of the outreach, and that's a common experience. And then kids that attend regional schools, it's usually been high school. Like very few students attend anything regional K through 12 or K through, and like so when we and I was when we started this work around educational equity, and I talked to the people who were involved in the original research. Part of our housing advocacy was okay, let's make sure these towns build their affordable housing so then we can participate and then we could create school integration. So then we actually talked to Adam Gordon at the Fair Share Housing Center, and asked them, okay, so we did it. We passed legislation. We got everything down. Mount Laurel, it's good. We're in the towns. They got to deal with it. They got to build affordable housing, right? And accessible affordable housing. And I'm like, okay, so how long before we get educational integration? Like how long before we see the numbers based off the neighborhoods changing? He was like 100 years. Okay, so let's say with that. I mean, we could ask him, but like by the time all that affordable housing development gets actually developed and people learn about that and people move in and have kids that start going to the school and we get all the data, decades. We're all going to be somewhere, wherever it is you believe we go. We're long gone. Ancestors, like I always think of that scene outside of Mulan. Like that's me. That's how I think about it. I'm like, hey, we're going to be up there like trying to hope that people still remember. So I guess that's why we spend so much time working with young people, by the way, because as Cookie likes to remind us, this battle will outlive us. And the goal is that we continue to follow segregation as it shows up. And that's another big piece of it because it's a shapeshifter. So to say that we're going to eliminate it is like saying we're going to live in another country. Honestly, but how do we improve it little by little? How do we, like you said, move the needle? Vicky, I see you have your hand up.
I just want to genuinely celebrate and applause and offer accolades to AAPI and the younger Asian American generation here who is showing up. They've been at this for a long time, and you guys are really not just showing up to listen. You guys are showing up as present and accounted for, if you will.
Yeah.
I just want to offer you applause that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Cookie, and just thank you so much for your leadership and just, you know, we're in the same meetings, we're in the same fight, and it's just so wonderful to work together. I think we have time for like one more question. If anyone wants any another question, either you want to raise your hand or drop in the chat.
If there's
Okay.
anything, I see there were some requests, and like our team is also on here. Feel free to reach out to us. Also, I hope I'm signed up for AAPI newsletter. I get it. I love it. Color Run was fantastic. We got to do more of that. And also like along with the fights, being community and the fights, both of them. But also like hope you all sign up to our newsletter as well, so you can learn more about the things that we're working on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leslie, and thank you to the Latino Action Network and the Latino Action Network Foundation. Sorry, I didn't put the F on earlier.
It's okay.
I want to just thank everyone for from Latino Action Network Foundation for everything that you do, your partnership, and all of you for joining us. If you want to, Shira, who's on our team, does a great job compiling resources. We're going to have the resources compiled from LAN and send it to everyone. I see people are, you know, part of different organizations. I see Brad as part of the Community Food Bank in New Jersey. If anyone wants to share any other resources, please send them to Shira. I will put Shira's email address in the chat, and feel free to send it to Shira, and Shira is going to send it out to everyone. So please look out for that. I also just want to say our next I'm so proud of us because like we have like a lunch and learn scheduled already for next month, and we're not scrambling. But we have our next lunch and learn on September 24th at noontime, 12 p.m. And it's going to be with the New Jersey Division of Civil Rights. It'll be open to everyone. We're going to just get an overview of what the New Jersey Division of Civil Rights does, what sort of services they provide, how to report discrimination and bias, some of the preventive training that we're doing, or upstander training work that Shira is leading here. Really looking forward to that. So that'll be, I'll send out the information in the email that Shira sends. We are also, will of course be taking more action on the Victoria Lee incident. So please sign up for a newsletter by going to aapi.newjersey.org or follow us on social media for the latest updates. And thank you again for everyone's support. And we hope to see everyone again in our next Lunch and Learn on September 24th.